Hey guys, Hasselman, we're back once again with a brand new video for you, and welcome to episode 18 of F1 2013, the Online Racer. Online multiplayer gameplay for Formula 1 2013, and real-world Formula 1 topics worth talking about. You guys voted on Twitter for this one. I gave you guys the choice between a debate about Williams versus Ferrari and their battle to be the best of the midfield teams, or a chance for me to talk about Daniel Ricciardo a little bit, and you guys chose the Honey Badger. So I'll be saving Williams versus Ferrari for either the weekend or next week. But in the meantime, let's talk a little bit about Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo, as you probably already know, is a 25-year-old Australian from Perth who just so happened to get a seat at Red Bull Racing this year and is killing it. As you may know, he was with the Toro Rosso team until just this past season, and he managed to outpoint his teammate, Jean-Eric Vergne, 20-13, even though Vergne had the overall best finish. He had a 6th place in Canada, but Ricciardo had 2 7ths. And he had 20 points to Jean-Eric Vergne's 13, and maybe on the basis of that and a few other factors, he got the Red Bull seat ahead of Jean-Eric Vergne and Kimi Räikkönen. I mean, that whole Red Bull seat thing was a little bit interesting. I think Red Bull did always want Kimi Räikkönen there. I think he and Vettel get along very well. I think they were in a good relationship, and back at the time, we all still thought Kimi Räikkönen was an elite driver. Now, maybe not so much. But it seemed that Räikkönen wanted a bit too much money. Red Bull weren't willing to give him that much, and Ferrari were willing to open a truckload of money for him. I mean, we already now know that Räikkönen's on 22 million euros this season. He's the joint most paid man in the field alongside Alonso and Seb. But in the meantime, talking about that, I mean, I mentioned before on the Max Verstappen episode 16, where I talked about how Vergne was a bit unlucky not to get that seat. And I still stand by this. I mean, I think Vergne and Ricciardo were very evenly matched. I think Vergne was a little bit better in the rain. I think Vergne was a slightly better qualifier than Ricciardo, in my opinion. But Ricciardo's race pace, I think, was a little bit better, and his racecraft was a little bit better. So it was very, very close between the two. I think easily both could have been given the seat. And I don't think there would have been too many complaints either way. I've always said I think Ricciardo being Australian, having English as his first language, probably made him a little bit more marketable, and I think this season so far has gone on to prove that. But yeah, obviously his form this year and where he is right now, he's doing an absolutely sensational job in the World Championship. I mean, I've said it before, I think he's my driver of the season right now. And I think, barring a complete meltdown, I think he will be driver of the season. When it comes to my award show, I mean, the fans will obviously have the Harry Awards as well later in the year to truly judge this. But right now, Daniel Ricciardo is leading the best of the rest chase. I mean, you have the entire field there. If you take Mercedes out of the equation, he's the only other man to have won a Grand Prix this year compared to everybody else. He has 156 points in the Drivers' Championship. He's just 35 behind Lewis Hamilton with 191, and I'm going to do my maths real quick. 64, behind Nico Rosberg's 220. So, as you can see, Daniel Ricciardo maybe still has an outside chance of winning the World Championship, especially given how we have a double point finale in Abu Dhabi coming up. See? More exciting, because Ricciardo's now got an outside chance. Hooray! So, as you can see, Ricciardo is doing a brilliant job, and he's got 35 points more than Alonso, who is generally regarded as the best driver in the field. Now, I know people are going to say the Red Bull's a stronger car than Ferrari this year, and you'd be right to think that. But Ricciardo has been superb this year. Even more so, I think it's more for the surprise factor of Ricciardo's success, because look who the other guy in the garage is, Sebastian Vettel, the reigning 4-time world champion with 39 career wins, and who I know for a fact, when I did my Fantastic Four episode on Vettel, and people were talking about the possibility of a teammate to push him, nobody said Daniel Ricciardo. I think it was only one guy who said Ricciardo might be able to pose a challenge to Seb, and to the surprise of everyone, it seems to have been like that's the actual case. I mean, Ricciardo has outpointed Vettel this year, nearly 1.5 to 1, 156 to 98. I mean, that's a 58-point difference there, which is a shock to everybody. I mean, Yeah, I think most people who know that Sebastian's been very, very unlucky in terms of car unreliability and being put on the wrong strategies and whatnot, compared to his teammate, who just seems to have had everything go his way since Malaysia. Obviously Ricciardo's been pretty unlucky too. I mean, let's be honest here. If he actually had a little bit more luck and finished that 5th where he probably should have finished in Malaysia and had his 18 points given back from Australia, he'd be right in Hamilton's grill right about now in terms of point value. It's even Ricciardo should have a higher point score than 156. And like I said, Ricciardo has benefited a little bit from Mercedes' own misfortune. I mean, like I said before, in Canada, both Mercedes cars had MGUK failures. In Hungary, Mercedes got it badly wrong on strategy. They screwed Rosberg over, and they put Hamilton on the wrong strategy. And Ricciardo once again rose to the top and took advantage of Mercedes' own mistakes. And again, Belgium, Rosberg again, him tapping Hamilton inadvertently ruined both their races. I mean, Rosberg nearly got away with it in terms of he only finished about 3 seconds behind Ricciardo in Spa, but despite that, it was more points taken out of the gap. I mean, Ricciardo has taken 35 points out of Hamilton's second place in the championship in the last 2 rounds alone. He's cut that gap in half now. I don't think anyone's really got him down as a title contender right now. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a long shot from here. Even if he wins at multiple rounds, it will still be a long shot. I mean, the fact he's even got 3 race wins is a phenomenal season given Mercedes' dominance. He deserves full credit for that. He's doing a fantastic job. And on top of that, Ricciardo is also extremely likeable. I think he's one of the most likeable drivers I've seen in Formula 1 in a long, long time. I mean, I'll be the first guy to admit, Formula 1 gets a bad rap because of its lack of true characters. And, a lot of Formula 1 drivers are arrogant, and they have to be because they have to have self-confidence in themselves to go out there and win. And we don't see very many genuinely nice and happy and funny moments in the sport. I mean, there's a couple of, I've always liked Sebastian Vettel, and I think a lot of people do when he's outside of the car. I think Jenson Button is extremely likeable and popular. I think Felipe, until this year when he started bitching about people, I think he was generally pretty likeable. But Ricciardo, I think, is a real breath of fresh air for the top tier in Formula 1. I mean, I think the guys lower down the paddock like to have a bit more fun and a little bit more easygoing, but when it comes to the top tier, it's all dead serious. A lot of saltiness thrown, a lot of bitterness, a lot of mind games, and Ricciardo just doesn't care. He's got the smile, which is visible from space. He's a big mixed martial arts fan, which I can appeal to being an MMA fan myself. I love Daniel Ricciardo for being a big fight fan. I like that. He's got an amazing taste in music. He's always smiling, always happy, always so positive, and I think a lot of people just seem to genuinely have really warmed to him and liked him, and he's made the whole Red Bull brand, I think, a little bit more likeable as a result of this. And the classiness and the sportsmanship between him and Sebastian it's a great positive for the sport. I mean, don't get me wrong, I understand why people are so cynical of the sport and so negative towards it, and trust me, from what we've seen this season, sometimes there's a good reason to be. But like I said, it's just a breath of fresh air, and it's just nice to see all this. It's nice to see a positive new role model and a positive new likeable guy who can take that sport a little bit further, maybe capture some new fans back in Australia, especially given how Red Bull's last driver for them was Mark Webber, who I've always said, in my opinion, was a bit of a miserable git when he didn't win. Now, don't get me wrong, I know Webber had a bit of a bad time at Red Bull, especially in the later years when Sebastian was outperforming him almost week in, week out. But whenever things didn't go Webber's way, I think he had to a bit of a moany git a lot of the time, like, oh, this and all that, and, taking pot shots, and, he wasn't the most positive guy to be around. I mean, Webber always had his fans, and I think he had the anti-Vettel fraternity on his side, a bit like what we're getting now with Lewis Hamilton, in the sense of, I don't think there's an awful lot of pro-Rosberg fans out there. I think it's the people that like Hamilton versus the people who don't like him. And I think it was a similar deal with Mark Webber when he was at Red Bull a couple of years ago. It was the people who liked Seb, which, let's be honest, wasn't very many people, and the people who didn't were getting behind Mark Webber by default, like, yay, go Webber, beat that arrogant German fuck, or something along those lines, pardon my language. So it's just nice just to have a new positive figure at the top of the sport, and I would love Daniel to come in and swoop and steal the championship. It probably won't happen, but I think it's really, really good for the sport if it does, and I would love to see him do well. But, you know, how far can he go? I mean, if Red Bull get a better car next year, if Sebastian Vettel still struggles to adapt to these new cars without the blown diffusers, can he win a world title? I mean, if he sticks around long enough, who knows? The problem is, it's going to be Newey's final car for Red Bull next year, so who knows what may happen. But I'm excited to see what Daniel Ricciardo can do. He's only going to get better. He's still only 25 years old after all. He's 2 years younger than Sebastian, which puts into perspective, really. But he's doing a fantastic job, and I think he's my driver of the season so far. But let me know what you guys think of Daniel, his performances so far. Can he do better? Can he win a world title even? I'd love to hear you guys' opinions as always. And until next time, I'll catch you guys later. Sayonara!